How do we schedule a book release? Yesterday, I talked a little bit about how I schedule my day. Actually, a lot. That ended up being a long video. If you watched that, thank you. And you will know that really I don't schedule my day. I am a routine-based person. So many things that I do throughout the course of the day are so ingrained in me that I don't need to figure out when I'm going to do them because I just do them. Writing is a similar process. So JT and I are not the type of writers who come up with an idea and then schedule out a time when we plan to have the draft of our book done. That's not how we work. I think we did try that when we were doing the November writing event that imploded, and we won't discuss that here, but that was the only time I think the two of us would ever sit down and say, we are going to write 50,000 words in a month. Normally, that's not how we work because we need to have inspiration to get our projects done. So, step one of scheduling a book release is to actually have a completed draft of a manuscript, whenever that may happen to be. Over the past couple of years, JT has had a lot of completed manuscripts set aside that we were waiting to have the money to get them through the editing and the cover design process in order to schedule releases for them. So that is why JT has something like 16 books out now, whereas I only have 2. And I hope to change that, but that's not the topic of this video. So he had a series of completed manuscripts that he could then choose from to send to the editors, get the covers designed, and schedule their release. Now, in order to get to, I guess, what you would call stage 2, because stage 1 would be having the written draft in hand, stage 2 would be looking at our finances to see what we could afford at the moment. JT goes through several rounds of, first he does beta reads. He has a group of beta readers that he will send his books to. And based on their schedules, we don't know for sure when all of those beta reads will come back. We don't give people a deadline. If they can get to it, that's fine. He will wait a reasonable amount of time, take what advice he's given and incorporate that, and then move on to the next phase of the editing process, which is to send his manuscript to Terry Case, terrycase.com. They struck up something of a friendship because they have similar backgrounds and their editing and writing styles mesh well together. The way she gives him advice is something that he finds very helpful. So he sends his manuscript to Terry, and then she will go through her rounds of edits on that. Once he gets that back, he will do any revisions that are necessary before sending it off to his next round of edits with Red Adept, which is our editorial company. Or not ours personally, it's the editorial company that we use, I should say. So once a book goes to Red Adept, they need to schedule it with their editors. To give you an example, with my current work in progress, Restless Spirits Book 2, I had hoped to release my book on April 15th, tax day. We just threw out a date because we were talking about JT's upcoming release, which is going out on schedule. Finding Salvation will be released March 17th. Early copies are available in our bookstore if you're interested. But this was on schedule. So my plan was to release my book a month later on April 15th. When I sent my manuscript off to Red Adept, their first editor was available on March 20th. The manuscript will go through several rounds of edits before I get it back and am able to get it formatted and uploaded. So April 15th is not happening because my editor is slotted to start on March 20th. The second round will be April 17th. which would be after the date that I had planned to release it. Plus, I don't yet have a cover. So I have set a revised date of release as Memorial Day weekend, late May 2026. And that's the kind of thing that we have to adapt to, because we are not relying just on our own work. We are also relying on the schedules of others, which completely understandable. So in JT's case, as I said, he has a lot of manuscripts set aside, and he can send those off to the editors whenever we have the time and the money to get that done. Usually it's the money. And we're trying to stagger his releases with my releases. Now, we have been releasing more of his books because it's taking me time to write my books. I don't have the backlog of completed manuscripts that he did. I have a backlog of partially completed manuscripts. So getting those done is my challenge, whereas we can just pop his into editing. So stage one is getting the completed manuscript, of which, as I mentioned, JT had quite a few. Then stage two is looking at our finances to find out when we can afford to do the editing and the cover design for the book release. Stage three is the editing process, which, as I mentioned, can take a long period of time. So if either JT or I have come up with a specific date that we plan to release a book, that may not be set in stone based on external factors. Because, for example, when I was releasing Passion Restored, I had a cover that I really liked, and then found out that the artist had used AI in the cover, which I did not want. So I was going through 99 Designs, which I believe is affiliated with Vistaprint, and they very kindly contacted me, said, the artist used AI in this. Do you want to proceed with the cover you were given, or do you want to start a new cover contest? I chose to start the cover contest over again. So that delayed things a little bit because I had to go through the entire cover design process again. And then I had intended to release Passion Restored probably in the April or May timeframe of last year, and it ended up coming out in July. I think we released it on JT's birthday last year. So I was actually several months behind where I really wanted to release it. I'm hoping to do better this year because I do have a completed manuscript in line behind Restless Spirits Book 2 that I would like to release in the summer. I was initially thinking June, but at this point it may not be until August. So you can see that timeline shift. As I said, stage three, editing process. Once that's done and once we have our cover in hand, really the next step is formatting the book. Now, JT and I have been doing that ourselves. We use Atticus, so we don't have to rely on someone else's schedule. It's more of our stamina. And at that point, we are so motivated to complete the process that we usually get it done pretty quickly. With that done, we get everything packaged together so that we can upload it to the various sites. And JT will do this part because he's gotten so experienced at it. He has released something like 16 books at this point, and it can be a challenging process, but it is something that he's much more familiar with at this point than I am. I will probably be doing my own once I become more familiar with it, but in the meantime, it's quicker for him to just do it because at that point, I think both of us are just kind of ready to move on to the next project. So, stage one, completed manuscript. Stage two, finances. Stage three, editing and cover design. Stage four, formatting. At the point where we have this done, then we can actually have our release date set in stone. However, there is one more step that we need to do. For the ebook, we can just put it up for pre-sale if we'd like, and maybe say, okay, it will be coming out in a month. It's on pre-sale right now, for example. The paperback version is a different story because there is a different cover. You have to get the wrap cover for your paperback. Then we normally will order proof copies. And since we do wide release, our proofs come from 3 different places. We use Amazon, we use Barnes & Noble, and we use Draft to Digital. The Amazon proofs normally come very quickly. They often come out of Las Vegas, which is just in the southern part of our state. So once they've been printed, they can usually get to us overnight. Barnes & Noble can take quite a bit longer, and Draft to Digital comes from back east, and it gets here when it gets here. So if we want to schedule the paperback release, we need to make sure all of the proof copies are up to our standards before deciding that, okay, we can now release these. So even though we have a specific date in mind, that may not always happen based on when we get our proof copies. Once everything is in hand, we've gotten all our proof copies, everything's approved, then we can sit down and say, okay, this is the release date that's going to happen. So you can see that scheduling a book release is challenging based on the various steps that I've laid out for you. If you are not someone who writes and you've never self-published a book, this probably sounds like a lot, and it is. The writing process is just the beginning, and it is very challenging to be able to schedule a specific date for a book release. Now, as I mentioned, we are coming up on the release of JT's book, Finding Salvation. This is the compilation trilogy of the novellas that are the prequels to the Serving Salvation trilogy. He had those all written. He got the first one through the process and uploaded it, so it's available widely for 99 cents as an ebook, and then the compilation will be out on March 17th, which is coming up in just a couple of weeks now, actually. What's today? Yeah, a little over 2 weeks. So that part of the process, that date is set in stone. Things are already set up. The pre-sale is going on, so please go check out the book if you're interested. You can find all the information on our website at www.carsonhume.com. And we hope you will pre-order a copy of this book because, as I've spelled out to you, we've done a lot of work to get to this point in the process, and it is work we love to do. There are a lot of challenges along the way, like getting our editors scheduled and finding our covers and things like that. I will say, JT has found a wonderful cover designer to work with, and I absolutely love this cover. It's similar to the Serving Salvation books, but this one is set 3,000 years prior to Serving Salvation, so the cover is a little bit different. It takes place on Earth, whereas Serving Salvation takes place out in space. So if you look at the covers for Serving Salvation versus Finding Salvation, you will notice there are some differences in the design, but they're similar enough that you can tell they're the same universe. And getting through that whole design process and getting things ready to go, we had to make sure that first the ebook cover was ready, then the complete wrap cover for the paperbacks was ready, and all of that's done. His cover designer not only worked really well with him, but was very patient, and they were able to work out. There were some challenges with payment for it and things like that, but the whole point being that took some time, and we couldn't really set an official release date until all of that was finalized, because we don't want to set a release date and then not be able to meet it, because I'm pretty sure in the case of Amazon, if you do that, you get kind of like a strike against you or something. I'm not 100% sure how it works, but we don't put out an official release date on places like Amazon until we're sure everything is ready to go. So scheduling a book release is a very challenging process. As I mentioned about yesterday's video, it starts out very organically because JT and I are inspiration-based writers, and we don't say I'm starting this on January 1st and finishing it January 31st. We may start it January 1st and then it's done when it's done. And then we pick up the rest of the process where we have to go through beta reads, editing, cover design, formatting, proof copies, all of that before we can say, okay, we are ready to release this book. In this case, this book on March 17th, 2026. So if you are a novice writer and you are thinking about scheduling book releases, I highly recommend that you not pick a date that's set in stone until you've worked your way through maybe a release or two to see how you work. Some authors I have watched and they can plan things out. I've seen authors who do Kickstarters and things like that, and scheduling all of that on top of everything else, I don't even know how they do it. So my kudos to anyone who is able to get all that scheduling done and is able to stick to the scheduling, because as I mentioned with what I talked about, it can be very difficult to stick to a schedule when you have a lot of outside factors happening. It is an interesting process. I really wish I could say, as I mentioned, that, Restless Spirits Book 2 is coming out April 15th. That's next month. But no. The manuscript is currently sitting at my editor. It won't be picked up for another couple of weeks. And in the meantime, I'm just going to keep working on other things. As I mentioned, I'm doing beta reads, for another author. I'm going to work very hard to get Restless Spirits Book 3 done, so that as soon as Restless Spirits Book 2 is out of the editing process, Restless Spirits Book 3 can go in. Of course, JT also has a manuscript that's currently with Terry Case. Or actually, no, I believe he just got it back from Terry Case, so he will be doing revisions. He's in the beta revision stage for that one. He's thinking of releasing that one in July, and the way he has been working, that should happen. I suspect that, as I said, my book, Restless Spirits Book 2, is currently with the editors. His next book will probably go to the editors right after mine. And then once that is back, my third book for Restless Spirits will probably go into editing. So we do have to schedule it out based on our finances. And we're going to probably have several months of a lot of expenses based on the cost of editing and the cost of cover design. And we have to schedule that out financially. So things may still shift. Like I'm thinking that my original idea for Restless Spirits Book 3 coming out in June, that will probably shift to August. So we may have a May release, a July release, and an August release. Then, to complicate things even further, the two of us are talking about releasing books on the same day in October. He is currently working on his, which is A Sheriff in Nevada Book 4. And mine is in the initial drafting stage, but until I get Restless Spirits Book 3 ready to go to the editors, that's going to sit in draft phase until I can actually sit down and focus on it. So my book may be a little bit up in the air. JT's will probably be on schedule. I am going to do my absolute best to get this book done in time for an October release, because I really, really want to release it on Nevada Day. It is a story that I've mentioned before. It's about Nevada statehood. It takes place in Carson City. I'm very excited about it. So our upcoming release schedule, based on all of the factors I talked about, it's looking like, and for sure, Finding Salvation, March 17th, you can get early autographed copies on our website right now at carsonhume.square.site. We have a limited number in-house, so if you want an autographed copy before release date, go check that out. They're also available for pre-sale on all of the platforms, and then they will go live on March 17th. That's set in stone. What's not quite set in stone yet is Restless Spirits Book 2, but I'm looking at Memorial Day weekend, May 2026, based on the current editing schedule. Then the next release after that would be JT's book, which is also in the Salvation universe. We're looking at July, late July, around JT's birthday. Then the next release after that would be Restless Spirits Book 3, in August sometime, maybe early September. I might do Memorial Day and Labor Day. And then in October, we're just, Sheriff of Nevada, Book 4, and Battleborn Bride, which is my historical set in Carson City in 1863, 1864. That is our current schedule of releases. That can change wildly. The only one that's set in stone is Finding Salvation. I wish we had more of the books set and ready to go, but it's always a process. So I hope you found this a helpful bit of information for you. If you are a new writer who is considering self-publishing, these are things that you need to think about when you're planning to schedule a book release. And other people do things like they will have a street team and they will have ARC readers, and that could add more time to your release schedule based on what your plans are when you release your book. JT and I, we do some social media and then we just kind of put it up there. But as I said, other people may do things like Kickstarters, they may do street teams, they may do ARC readers. And I do believe JT's Finding Salvation, if you want to read an ARC copy, he has it up on Book Sirens. So you can check that out. But ARC readers, basically those are advanced review copies, and the people who read the book are supposed to post a review on it, hopefully prior to the release so that you start getting some buzz. But at this point, the release is coming up pretty quickly, so the odds of getting people to read and review the book before the release are becoming slimmer. But as I said, other authors may add those things to their release schedule. So getting a specific date, there are a variety of factors involved, and it is a very complex process. And JT and I are going with the flow. We don't have a lot of fans yet, so we do have a few people who are like, oh, when's the next book coming out? But it's not like, when you're expecting a big release from one of the big 5 houses, they'll have a date and they'll say, okay, this author has this book done, it's coming out on this date, and a lot of people are ready to go grab that book. That's not happening with us. So we don't stress too much when we have to shift a release date, and we don't set it in stone until we're sure the book is ready to go live. Again, if you are a newbie writer, I hope this at least helped you to figure out the best way to plan a book release, to schedule a book release. If you are a reader who's just interested in the life of a writer, well, congratulations if you followed along with any of what I talked about, because it can be quite challenging. And it does seem like sometimes you just kind of throw a book out there, but that's not really how it works. We won't get into what other things are happening in publishing right now, because that's something I'd rather not think about. It just makes me cranky. JT and I do not use AI for our covers. We do not use AI for our writing. We sit down and we sweat through drafting a book ourselves. It's our own blood, sweat, and tears. So scheduling the book release is based on all of those factors. And we'll see how our 2026 publishing schedule goes. And going into 2027, I do have another 3 books planned in my Restless Spirit series. Plus, I have another series planned. I have a trilogy that will have offshoot romances. And at this point in time, I'm not sure how much I'm going to get written, but I'd love to get them all out there. And I have a series that I started many years ago. I had the first book up, but I took it down. I may plan to revisit that at some point and re-release it along with the rest of the series that I had planned. And, scheduling all that out, thinking about, well, here are our 2026 releases. What are we doing in the future? We're just going to let time take care of that, because JT and I just don't know how much energy and mental acuity we're going to have as we continue aging. We are in our 60s, so it could be that we'll be great for another 20 or 30 years, which would be awesome. And, It could be the opposite. We never know. And that's true of anybody at any age. All of that said, thank you for hanging out with me today. I hope this made sense. I am looking forward to finishing what I started today, which is taking down my winter/Valentine's decor and swapping it out for St. Patrick's Day, because we are in March. Spring is coming. You can see I have my welcome spring sign up here behind me. The weather is getting nicer. We do have the time change coming up on Sunday, March 8th. So if you are in an area that changes the clocks, be aware of that. We're springing forward, which is not our favorite thing here, but you know, it is what it is. In the meantime, thank you for hanging out with me. I hope you're having a wonderful day and week so far. I'm Cassidy Carson, and this is the Life of a Writer. Take care.